Okay, so here comes the tungsten jigstone. Tie this on a C400 BL. This is a size 8. Fishing a 3.5, or well, we're fitting it. We're not fishing yet. We're fitting a 3.5 millimeter tungsten slotted faceted bead on it. And we're going to wrap uh, 10 or 11 wraps of some 2/0 lead wire around the hook shank behind that bead, and I'm just going to take a small drop of Zap-A-Gap, get it on the end of my needle, try to get that bead into optimum position. I'm going to drop that little drop of Zap-A-Gap on the back of the thread and push it up into the bead to kind of get things to sit into place for me. We'll give that a couple of seconds to cure. This fly works really well in the Truckee River. I guess performs best for me in really snaggy sections of river that I fish. Just being on the jig hook, of course, allows that hook point to ride upwardly, and well, we hope we catch less snags along the bottom of the river and more fish with that hook ride in the opposite direction. Okay, I think I've given that Zap-A-Gap enough time to just kind of cure up there. I'm going to start my thread just behind the lead, and we'll bring the thread just past the bend of the hook on this fly. Cut that thread off, and we're going to use some goose biots as our tailing fibers. But before we throw the goose biots on here, I'm going to create a little dubbing ball and wrap that around the hook a few times. This is in hopes of just putting some more bulky fibers along the hook shank here to help spread these goose biots away from one another. It also looks very similar to a lot of the back ends of stoneflies. They have a little bit of mass in between their tail segments. So I've pulled two biots off of the quill, and I've kind of press them back to back against each other so that they splay kind of outwardly from one another. And we're going to straddle that hook shank with those two biots, which are also even with each other. I need to make sure those tips are even with one another right here. And I'm going to push that into position that I want. I guess lengthwise I'm usually a little longer than the hook gap as far as a reference point for these tails. So we'll push it into position with our right hand, and I'll really try to keep things right in the same spot as I transfer hands. Now my left hand is the position holder, and my right hand is going to make one loose wrap and another tight wrap right after to continue to wrap these goose biots down and secure them in place. Just going to take a quick look-see if they aren't as even as you like. We sometimes can manipulate the top end of the feather there, or the top end of the biot. These are cracking on me pretty good. If they stay together, I'll go ahead and bury them under thread all the way up to the lead wire, but this one is already kind of cracked on me, so I'm just going to pinch and pull that off. Do the same with the one on my side, and without the biots underneath the thread here, as I wrap up towards the lead wire, I may need to build up the body a little bit more with my thread than, say, if those biots remained intact underneath the thread tying up to the lead wire. But no big deal there. It'll probably, well, Who knows if it'll be smoother or not with the thread wraps or the biot underneath. Anyway, the tails just want to be even, splayed out from one another. Stoneflies, the tails of stoneflies is a strong characteristic of them. They have prominent tails. Alright, oops. That lead wire hopped on me. I kind of pinched it with the thread and it jumped up on me, but I think I was able to save it there. I don't think that's going to give us too many issues. Okay, at this point we're going to go ahead and pull off what's going to eventually be the abdomen material, and that is ultra wire, copper wire. Copper wire but gold in its color. This is brassy gauged copper wire. I'm going to cut off about 5.5, 6 inches of this ultra wire. I'll go ahead and I'll make the slot of that tungsten bead the beginning of the tie-off point, and I'll bring that ultra wire all the way back to the back end of the fly. And then wrap the thread forward, trying to build a nicely shaped tapered body here with the thread before we wrap up it with the ultra wire. And just like everything in nature, things taper. Our arms and legs kind of taper down. The torso of our bodies tapers down to skinnier points. Insects kind of do the same thing, even though it's not as apparent because they're a lot smaller than we are. But you always try to build nice natural tapers to your bodies. Make things look nice and neat. Okay, I think I built up that body fairly well. That abdomen. Now we're going to wrap this ultra wire up the hook shank. Try to keep this as nice and uniform, consecutive wraps to one another. Try to develop a nice, smooth body for our fly. Let's see here. This can get a little tedious. There's a lot of wrapping if you let it. Take your time. This ultra wire as the abdomen, it makes the fly pretty bulletproof. It's a very durable fly. It's heavy, durable, sinks real fast. Makes this fly a favorite for short line nymphing, places where you need to get down real quick, where you don't have time. You don't have time to wait for the fly to get down to the fish's level. So this fly has enough metal in it to fall down and get in front of a trout's face fast. Let's see. So that's a pretty good looking thorax. I don't have any huge complaints on that. We're starting to get a little shape here. While the hook is still relatively bare, we're gonna go ahead and find a couple more goose biots to tie in as our antenna. If I can, I'll try to pick out some goose biots that are maybe a little skinnier in their stature than, say, the tails were, but it's really no big deal. I like a little skinnier of a goose biot to use as the antenna. But for the antenna, I'm going to tie them in one at a time. The bead does a great job of separating those antennae for us. I want to try to get those as even as possible. Maybe bring a few securing wraps back, and then I'll cut off the excess here before continuing to wrap the thread back to where I ended that ultra wire. And now I'm just going to build up the thorax with thread. And we're going to tie in our shell casing. This is some medium-sized black holographic tinsel. You kind of try to secure it in there at a diagonal angle and then straighten it out as I secure it back, stopping where that ultra wire ended. Trying to find a place to hide that tinsel. And underneath the tinsel is going to be a little bit of turkey tail. Turkey tail, we're going to cut off a section of turkey tail that hopefully fits the fly right. I want to get it about the thickness of the thorax itself. I'll cut it at a point. One end I'll kind of cut a point to and bring that thread all the way back up to the bead. Kind of the same process. Maybe get it in there at a little bit of a diagonal angle just to secure it in there, and then try to straighten it out as make sure she lays nice and straight and square as we tie that back. Again, stopping at the same point where the abdomen ends, the thorax begins, right? Okay, so we're eventually going to fold all of those forward, but we need to build up some bulk to our thorax. We're going to use some more Awesome Possum golden stone dubbing here. Let's create a dubbing noodle about 2.5, 3 inches long. Let's start with that. Best to start with less than you need. It's always been the case. And we're gonna start wrapping a thorax body. When I get maybe close to the midpoint of the thorax, equidistant from the abdomen and the beginning of the bead there, we'll go ahead and pause with our thread. I'm just clearing out a few rogue hairs that I'd rather not tie. Into the rubber legs that I'm going to tie on. And I'm going to pull off 2 equal sections of flexi floss. span flex. They're about an inch long. With both of those pieces of flexi floss together, I'll kind of tie them in at a diagonal, and then I'll come in and square them up. And take just 1-2 more wraps to separate the front from the back legs on both sides. We can manipulate those legs, kind of get them to the positioning that we want. I find sometimes it helps just to give maybe a couple of reps of thread underneath the armpits of the legs to kind of help them direct away from the hook shank. When they have more of a, call it an extreme angle to the hook shank, the more they tend to wiggle in the water. If they're tied in at more the same direction of the hook shank, then they just, well, I don't like it when they lay flat against the hook shank. They don't give that triggering effect when they lay flat, so I like them to be more closer to that perpendicular angle to the hook as far as their positioning. That way they really twitch and move as soon as current starts flowing through them. It gives us the trigger that we hope rubber legs give us. It triggers the fish to say, hey, that looks like a bug. And if it looks like a bug, I'll open my mouth up for it. Just continuing building these somewhat short dubbing noodles here, and we're almost done shaping the top end of this abdomen here, or thorax, I'm sorry. We already tied that abdomen. We're done with that abdomen. Square that up. Square that up. I'm going to pull a little bit of the excess off of that rather than try to fit more dubbing onto the hook than what I need. Okay, so we got a pretty good shape going on to everything here. And just a couple more steps and we're fishing. All I need to do now is pull the turkey and the holographic tinsel forward and tie that off, and this fly is done. So let's cross our fingers and hope all goes well here. Turkey tail is folded forward and secured with a few thread wraps there. After the thread wraps, we'll come in and try to get a nice clean cut, and just to be confident, I'm going to secure that in with a couple more wraps before I pull the holographic tinsel forward. Trying to get that holographic tinsel right in the middle of that turkey tail that we pulled forward. Oof, that looks good. That looks nice. Secure it in with a few lead or thread wraps. Cut it off. I'm just gonna fold those leggings back as I build up a little securing point behind the bead of the hook. Now I'll pull off the whip finisher. Finish that off. And by golly, there is the tungsten jigstone. Those rogue hairs, those will fall off as you fish it, but you can definitely come in and clean those up if you prefer. There she is. Fish it. It's a good one.